We find a very observant Jonathan Harker traveling to Transylvania to meet Count Dracula, hoping to find a knowledgeable man capable of telling him about his studies. Harker travels across Europe, spotting peculiar people and communities along the way, but that doesn't stop him. He arrives in Transylvania, confronted by beggars and gypsies begging him not to go. He refuses their cries for help and goes to the castle anyways. There, he is met by the evil that is Count Dracula, a vampire. Months have passed and Mina Harker grows worried. She and a group of people travel to the castle in hopes of saving their friend. They do save him, but lose Lucy Westrina in the battles against evil. Jonathan and Mina marry and have kids, and live their life knowing that they escape vampiric evil that is Count Dracula.
Dracula by Bram Stoker is a widely regarded novel for its Gothic themes and symbols. Our most important themes and symbols include setting, mystery, heightened emotions, fear and despair, dark love, and transformation. Setting is in Transylvania in the Middle East. Transylvania and the neighboring countries are known for their vagueness and darkness that surrounds them. Constantly shrouded in fog and mystery, Transylvania is the key location for vampiric evils and darkness. And I quote, "As the evening fell, it began to get very, and the growing twilight seemed to emerge into one dark mistiness, the gloom of the trees, oak, beech, and pine, though in the valleys which ran deep between the spurs of the hills. As we ascended through the pass, the dark firs stood out here and there against the background of late-lying snow." Listening to this quote, it gives readers the idea and realization that Transylvania is a very dark and vague place, suitable for dark vampires like the Count and the sisters in the castle.
Mystery plot. It shows mystery plot because in Gothic literature, Gothic generic traits, there's usually a threatening mystery and a curse, as well as countless trappings and the hidden passages. One of these quotes can be shown as mystery plot on page 7. I had seen the outside of the hotel as we flew along. The driver leaned forward, and on each side of the passengers, craning over the edge of the coach, peered eagerly into the darkness. This shows mystery due to the fact that Jonathan Harker does not know what's going on, and most people are just peering into the darkness for no apparent reason. Another quote can be shown on page 8 that says, "There were dark rolling clouds overhead and the air heavy, oppressive sense of thunder. It had seemed as though mountain range had separated into two atmospheres, and now that had got me into a thunderous one. I was now myself looking out for the conveyance, which was to take me to the Count." I chose this because it fits into the mystery plot by using darkness and describing the area, and giving a sense of suspense into the story and how dark the surroundings were to Jonathan Harker. There's another quote on page 12 that can also represent this, and it says, "I stood in silence where I was, though I did not know what to do. Of bell or knocker there was no sign, though these frowning walls and dark window openings." Again, this fits into the mystery plot by describing the Count's castle as very dark, and a deeper meaning that we found usually something bad happens at the castle.
Fear played a major role in the story, as it created a suspense and overall feeling of the book. On page 15 it said, "As the Count leaned over me, and his hands touched me, I could not repress a shudder. It may have been that his breath was rank, but a horrible feeling of nausea came over me." This quote lets you know early on in the story that Dracula was a dark, scary figure who made most of the characters have a feeling of fear. On page 43 it said, "He might kill me, but death now seemed the happier choice of evils." As Jonathan Harker was desperate to get a key to open a door, he was risking getting killed, but he felt that he is willing to die because of his constant fear he has of being there. On page 15, the quote, "Oh, my friend John, but it was butcher work. Had I not been nerved by thoughts of other dead, and of the living over whom hung such a pall of fear, I could not have gone on. I'd tremble and tremble even yet, through till all was over. God be thanked, my nerve did stand." This quote shows up after they see Dracula's tomb and are afraid of the undead, which brings more fear to them as they can see what could happen to them in the future.
Alright, so the next symbol I have was heightened emotions, and the first use of it is when Jonathan is taking a trip to Transylvania on horseback, and the driver sees a blue flame in the distance, and it catches his attention. And then also there are wolves howling really loudly, and instead of just driving off, the driver just jumps off and runs after the wolves, or runs towards the sound of the wolves, and Jonathan states that a dreadful fear had came upon him, and he was afraid to even mention it to the driver. And so I think this has to do with heightened emotions, because although he has this overwhelming fear, he keeps to himself and just acts like nothing happened. Okay, the next idea of heightened emotions I used was whenever Jonathan is caught in a storm and he has to wait until it passes, and he states that he has a feeling of fear and question, page 66, because shortly after the storm hits, the weather is completely calm, and this makes him feel nervous and wonders what could have happened. And he also thinks that it was maybe a supernatural being or a god that caused it. And I use this example because he's once again nervous, and he has a feeling of fear, but he remains calm. Okay, one of the symbols I used was dark love, and the first example can be seen when Jonathan has an encounter with 3 women who have red lipstick, piercing eyes, and almost red skin. Jonathan states in his head that he has a desire to kiss them, page 32, and he also says that they give off an odd feeling and he's really scared. And this shows dark love because he's letting his fear guide him to a path of love. Alright, the next symbol for dark love I have is when Arthur says, if you only knew how gladly I would die for her, you would understand. And I think this shows dark love because obviously he's scared to die, but since he loves her so much, he is willing to die so she'll live.
Another symbol is transformation. Transformation can be found mostly through Jonathan Harker's character quotes and journals. He changes his viewpoints through experience in Count Dracula's castle and later contradicts his earlier statements. I quote, "She then rose and dried her eyes, and taking a crucifix from her neck offered it to me. I did not know what to do, for as an English churchman, I have been taught to regard such things as in some measure idolatrous, and yet it seemed so ungracious to refuse an old lady meaning so well and in such a state of mind." This later transforms into, "Bless the good woman who hung the crucifix round my neck, for it is a comfort and a strength to me whenever I touch it." In the beginning of the novel, Jonathan Harker chooses not to believe in religious items, viewing them as too symbolic in the church. But later, we see Harker using the religious item as a sort of safety blanket. It gives him comfort in times of uncertainty. Another transformation could be seen in the color red and blood. They are both a large symbol throughout the novel. At first, Harker views war and fighting as a bad thing, saying, "Blood is too precious a thing in these days of dishonorable peace, and the glories of the great races are as a tale that is told." But later, after seeing the unnecessary violence from Count Dracula and the sexual acts from the vampire sisters, Harker changes his views, saying the red light in them was lurid, as if the flames of hellfire blazed behind them. The color red was symbolic to blood, something Harker found so precious, but later he changes his views again, saying something as terrifying as hellfire to represent the color red and blood.